Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going deep on management skills.
Ooh, interesting.
Those crucial abilities that help leaders guide teams and organizations to success.
Absolutely.
And, we always like to have good source material for these deep dives.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at excerpts from a business textbook
Nice.
to give us a solid foundation in the core concepts.
Love it.
So think of this deep dive as your crash course in management essentials.
I like that.
Whether you're leading a team, working within one, or just curious about how the business world ticks.
And you know what's so fascinating about these skills is that they're not just for people at the top.
Right.
They're valuable for anyone at any point in their professional journey.
Absolutely. The text highlights 6 key skills: communication, delegation, planning, leadership, decision-making, and interpersonal skills.
It's like a puzzle,
Yeah.
You need all the pieces.
And the book really emphasizes that these skills are all interconnected.
Exactly.
Like if one piece is missing, the whole picture suffers.
Yeah, like communicate.
Right. That's the foundation of everything.
For everything else, yeah. And the book breaks down the communication process into sender, receiver, message, and feedback. And it really stresses the importance of clarity. It even shares a funny anecdote about a misinterpreted message regarding a solar eclipse.
Oh, wow.
Like that game of telephone we played as kids.
Oh, yeah.
Where the message gets totally distorted as it's passed along.
That's a great analogy.
So it highlights how misunderstandings can lead to real consequences.
Especially in a business setting, right?
Especially in a business setting, yeah. The book then contrasts this communication mishap with a case study of Satya Nadella at Microsoft. When he took over as CEO, Microsoft was seen as kind of this lumbering giant, struggling to keep pace with the rapidly changing tech world.
Yeah, they were definitely at a turning point.
And the text credits Nadella's communication style as a major factor in the company's transformation.
Well, the book says that Nadella clearly articulated his vision for Microsoft, moving away from this Windows-only mindset and embracing a mobile-first, cloud-first strategy.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and this clear communication was key to inspiring employees, attracting new talent, and ultimately propelling Microsoft back to the forefront of the tech industry.
It's fascinating. He didn't just dictate his vision. He really focused on fostering a culture of open communication and collaboration.
Yeah.
And this created an environment where employees felt empowered to share their ideas
Yes.
and contribute to the company's success.
So communication isn't just about giving orders or sending emails. It's about creating that shared understanding and inspiring action.
Absolutely. Connecting with people on an intellectual and emotional level.
Exactly. The text then moves on to delegation.
Okay.
I have to admit, this is a skill that I've personally struggled with in the past.
Really?
It's that fine line between handing off responsibility and just dumping a task on someone.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah. The book makes a clear distinction between delegation,
Okay.
where you transfer responsibility while providing support,
Right.
and abdication,
Right.
which is basically just dumping a task and forgetting about it.
It's like the difference between handing someone a baton in a relay race versus throwing it at them and hoping for the best.
That's a perfect analogy.
And the book emphasizes that effective delegation is all about empowering your team,
Sure.
not burdening them. When done right, it builds trust, it motivates employees, and it allows managers to focus on higher-level tasks.
But how do you make sure you're doing it effectively?
Well, the book actually provides some practical guidelines from a business consultant named Keith Gunningham.
Okay.
He emphasizes clear instructions, agreed-upon deadlines, and ongoing support and feedback.
I like how he stresses selecting the right person for the task.
Yes.
It's not just about offloading work.
Yeah.
It's about matching their skills and responsibilities to create opportunities for growth. It's almost like you're playing matchmaker, finding that perfect pairing of person and task.
Exactly.
Now, shifting gears to planning.
Okay.
The book presents it as a roadmap for your business. It breaks down planning into 3 levels: strategic, tactical, and operational.
That reminds me of that saying, failing to plan is planning to fail.
Yes.
Having different levels of planning ensures you're prepared for both the long game and the day-to-day challenges.
Absolutely. So strategic planning, that's setting long-term goals, defining the overall direction of the organization. It's like creating a blueprint for the future.
Okay.
Then you have tactical planning, which breaks down those strategic goals into more manageable chunks, outlining specific strategies and actions.
So that's more about the execution.
Exactly.
Turning that big picture vision into reality.
And finally, there's operational planning, which focuses on the day-to-day activities required to keep things running smoothly. This is where you get into the nitty-gritty details, like scheduling, resource allocation, and process optimization.
And it's important to remember that these different levels of planning, they're not isolated. They all work together to make sure everyone's moving in the same direction.
Exactly.
The book actually provides a really handy acronym to remember the 5 steps of the planning process.
DDIM.
DDIM,
Yeah.
that's something I can remember.
Yeah.
What does it stand for?
Define, analyze, develop, implement, and monitor.
So it's not enough to just create a plan and file it away.
No.
You need to constantly review it, refine it, and adapt to changing circumstances and feedback.
It should be a living document, right?
Yes, the book really emphasizes that a plan should be a living document, constantly evolving to meet the needs of the organization.
Rigidity can be the death of a good plan.
Oh, for sure.
The business world is constantly changing,
Yeah.
so being able to adapt and adjust your course is essential.
Speaking of adapting and adjusting,
Yeah.
that brings us to leadership, a skill that's often romanticized, but can be incredibly challenging in practice. It's true, and there are so many different leadership styles.
Yes.
The book contrasts 2 main approaches: transactional leadership
Okay.
and transformational leadership.
So transactional leadership is very much a give-and-take approach.
Yeah.
You set clear expectations, provide rewards for good performance, and issue consequences for poor performance.
It's like managing transactions.
Hence the name.
On the other hand, you have transformational leadership,
Okay.
which is all about inspiring a shared vision, fostering collaboration, and empowering individuals to grow and develop.
So think of it like this. A transactional leader might say, do this and you'll get a bonus. A transformational leader would say, let's work together to achieve something amazing.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Transformational leaders are about creating a culture where people are passionate about their work and committed to achieving a common goal.
Yeah.
They inspire people to go above and beyond what's expected of them.
The book briefly mentions the servant leadership philosophy, which I find quite intriguing.
Yes.
Have you heard much about that?
It focuses on serving others first
Okay.
and building trust through empathy and active listening.
That's interesting.
It's a fascinating concept that challenges traditional notions of leadership.
Yeah, definitely something to explore further. Now let's move on to decision-making,
Okay.
another critical skill for anyone in a leadership role.
Absolutely.
The book breaks down decision-making into a 5-step process,
Yeah.
emphasizing the importance of gathering information, analyzing options, and weighing the potential consequences.
So what are those 5 steps?
Well, the first step is to define the problem or opportunity you're facing. So what are you trying to achieve? What are the desired outcomes?
Okay, so you're setting the stage,
Yeah, sure.
we're figuring out what you're dealing with,
Yeah.
and then what?
Then you need to gather all the relevant information
Yeah.
and analyze the situation. What are the potential risks and benefits? What are the available resources?
Okay, so you're gathering your intel. What's next?
Then it's all about exploring alternative solutions. Don't just jump on the first idea that comes to mind. Brainstorm a range of options and evaluate each one carefully.
So you're thinking outside the box.
Yes, exactly.
Looking at all the angles.
And once you've identified the best solution, it's time to implement it decisively.
Okay.
But the process doesn't stop there. The final step is to monitor the results.
Right.
So did your decision achieve the desired outcome?
If not, what do you do?
If not, be prepared to adapt and adjust course.
So it's a very iterative process.
It is.
Learning and adaptation are key.
The book also touches on the pros and cons of individual versus group decision-making.
Interesting.
Individual decisions can be made quickly, which is crucial in emergencies. But group decisions often benefit from a wider range of perspectives and can lead to more creative solutions.
So the best approach really depends on the situation.
Exactly.
Sometimes you need a decisive leader to take charge,
Right.
and other times you need a collaborative team to brainstorm the best solution.
Exactly. Now on to our final skill, interpersonal skills,
Okay.
which is all about building positive relationships and navigating the human side of the workplace.
This is where things get really interesting.
Yes.
You can have all the technical skills in the world,
Right.
but if you can't connect with people, you don't be an effective leader.
The book emphasizes the importance of empathy, active listening, and understanding different perspectives. It's about creating a work environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing ideas, providing feedback, and supporting each other.
Strong interpersonal skills involve recognizing that everyone brings their own unique strengths and weaknesses to the table.
Yeah.
And a good leader can harness those individual talents to create a cohesive and high-performing team.
It's like being the conductor of an orchestra,
I love that analogy.
blending individual talents to create this harmonious symphony.
Now let's take a closer look at each of these skills
Yes.
and explore some real-world examples of how they're applied in action.
Sounds good. Welcome back. So now that we've laid the groundwork, let's delve deeper into each of these essential management skills and see how they play out in real-world scenarios. We talked about Satya Nadella's communication style as a key factor in Microsoft's transformation. It's interesting how the book highlights a specific communication technique he used, called One Microsoft.
Yeah, One Microsoft wasn't just a slogan. It represented a fundamental shift in the company's culture. Nadella wanted to break down the silos that had developed between different departments and create a more collaborative, unified organization.
So to achieve this, he used the One Microsoft message consistently in his communications, from company-wide emails to public speeches. It was a simple message, but it helped to create a shared understanding and a sense of common purpose.
A well-crafted message repeated consistently can have such a powerful impact.
It's fascinating.
It really is.
The book then dives into delegation. You mentioned earlier that this is a skill you've personally struggled with. Can you share a bit about your experience?
Well, early in my career, I tended to fall into the trap of thinking I had to do everything myself.
Right.
I was afraid to delegate because I thought it would reflect poorly on my abilities or that the task wouldn't be done to my standards.
I think we all kind of have that tendency sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like we tie our self-worth to our ability to do everything perfectly.
Exactly. But the truth is, effective delegation is about recognizing that you can't do everything yourself.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yes.
It's about leveraging the strengths of your team and empowering them to take ownership.
It sounds like you kind of learned this lesson the hard way.
I did.
Was there a specific turning point for you?
There was actually this project where I was completely overwhelmed.
Okay.
I was working late nights, weekends, and I still couldn't keep up.
Wow.
Finally, a colleague pulled me aside and said, "You need to delegate some of these tasks. You're not Superman."
That's funny.
Yeah, as a wake-up call.
So what did you do?
I took a deep breath and started delegating tasks. Following those guidelines from Keith Cunningham that we discussed earlier,
Okay.
I was amazed at how well the team responded.
Oh, good.
They were actually excited to take on more responsibility.
Good.
And the project ultimately benefited from their diverse perspectives and skills.
It's a great example of how delegation, when done right, can be a win-win for everyone.
It really is.
Now, let's shift our focus to planning. The book presented a helpful acronym to remember the 5 steps in the planning process. DADIM. Define, analyze, develop, implement, and monitor. But it struck me that sometimes over-planning can become a form of procrastination.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever encountered that?
I have, for sure. It's easy to get caught up in the details and spend so much time planning that you never actually get around to taking action.
Yeah.
I've definitely been guilty of that myself.
So how do you find that balance then between planning effectively and avoiding analysis paralysis?
It is a delicate balance. I think it's crucial to set clear deadlines for each stage of the planning process. You need to create a sense of urgency, even in the planning phase.
Deadlines can be incredibly motivating.
They really can.
It's also important to remember that no plan is perfect.
You need to be willing to adapt and adjust your course as you go along.
Like we said, the book emphasized treating a plan as a living document.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to make changes if the original plan isn't working.
Right.
Flexibility is key.
Speaking of flexibility, that brings us to leadership, a skill that requires constant adaptation and evolution. The book contrasts transactional and transformational leadership styles. I'm curious, from your experience, which style do you find more effective?
That's a tough question. I think both styles have their place depending on the situation.
Right.
Transactional leadership can be effective when you need to get things done quickly and efficiently,
Okay.
or when working with a team that is new or inexperienced.
Yeah.
However, in the long run, I believe transformational leadership is more sustainable
Okay.
and leads to greater levels of engagement and innovation.
Why is that?
Well, transformational leaders create a culture of shared purpose and inspire their teams to go above and beyond. They empower individuals to take ownership and contribute their unique talents.
Okay.
And this creates a more fulfilling and rewarding work environment, which ultimately leads to better results.
It sounds like transformational leadership is about building a movement, not just managing a team.
That's a great way to put it.
The book highlights Satya Nadella as a prime example of a transformational leader. But wasn't his initial mobile-first strategy considered a misstep? Microsoft struggled to gain traction in the mobile market, and some critics argue that this focus actually hindered their progress in other areas.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Not every decision a leader makes will be a home run.
Right.
But what's important is how they respond to setbacks.
Okay.
Nadella was willing to acknowledge his mistakes, adjust his strategy, and ultimately steer Microsoft towards a more successful path.
That's a hallmark of a great leader.
It is.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about being adaptable and learning from your experiences.
Absolutely. Leadership is a journey, not a destination.
Yes.
There will be bumps along the road.
For sure.
But the key is to keep learning, growing, and evolving.
Now let's move on to decision-making. The book provides a 5-step process for making effective decisions. But it doesn't really delve into the emotional aspects of decision-making.
Right.
How do you manage the pressure and uncertainty that often come with making tough calls?
That's a great question. It's important to acknowledge that emotions play a significant role in decision-making, even in a professional setting.
Right, we're not robots.
We bring our own biases, experiences, and gut feelings to the table.
So how do you find that balance between logic and intuition?
I try to approach decision-making with a healthy dose of self-awareness.
Okay.
What are my underlying assumptions? Am I letting my emotions cloud my judgment? Am I overly attached to a particular outcome?
It's almost like having an internal dialogue with yourself,
Exactly.
challenging your own biases.
It's about being honest with yourself and recognizing that you don't always have all the answers,
The book also emphasizes seeking input from others.
which can help you to broaden your perspective and identify potential blind spots.
Sometimes 2 heads are better than 1, especially when it comes to making tough calls.
I agree.
Now, let's explore our final skill, interpersonal skills. You mentioned earlier that strong interpersonal skills are essential for building positive relationships and navigating the human side of the workplace. What are some of the key qualities, then, that contribute to strong interpersonal skills?
I would say empathy is at the top of the list.
Okay.
The ability to understand and share the feelings of others. It's crucial for building trust and rapport.
The book talks about active listening as a key component of empathy. It's not just about hearing what someone is saying, but truly understanding their perspective.
Yes, and that involves paying attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues.
Oh, okay.
What is their body language telling you? What is the tone of their voice conveying? Are they hesitant or confident in their communication?
You're reading between the lines, picking up on those subtle signals. That can reveal a lot about what someone is truly thinking and feeling.
Exactly, and it's also about asking clarifying questions to ensure you're understanding their perspective correctly.
Okay.
Sometimes we make assumptions based on our own experiences, and it's important to check those assumptions and ensure we're truly listening to the other person.
The book also emphasizes the importance of clear and respectful communication.
It sounds simple, but it's something that many people struggle with.
Yeah.
Communication breakdowns are a common source of conflict in the workplace.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's often not about what we say, but how we say it.
Right.
Our tone of voice, body language, and even our choice of words can impact how our message is received.
So it's not just about being right. It's about being effective in your communication.
Exactly. And that involves being mindful of your audience, their perspective, and their emotional state.
Okay.
It's about finding ways to communicate clearly, respectfully, and with empathy.
It sounds like strong interpersonal skills are about building bridges, not walls.
That's a great analogy.
Creating connections, fostering trust, and finding common ground, even when there are differences of opinion.
And in today's increasingly complex and interconnected world, those skills are more important than ever.
I agree.
Whether you're leading a team, collaborating on a project, or simply interacting with colleagues, strong interpersonal skills can make all the difference in your success and the success of your organization.
Welcome back to our deep dive into management skills. We've spent the last 2 segments really unpacking these 6 essential skills: communication, delegation, planning, leadership, decision-making, and interpersonal skills.
We have, and it's been fascinating to see how these skills are not just theoretical concepts,
Right.
but practical tools that can be applied at all levels of an organization.
For sure.
From the entry-level employee all the way up to the CEO.
And we've seen how these skills are so interconnected, like mastering one can really strengthen the others.
Absolutely, they build upon each other.
What I find really interesting is how these skills aren't just fixed traits. They're abilities that can be learned, developed, and refined over time.
It's like learning a new language or a musical instrument.
Yes,
It takes practice, dedication,
for sure.
a willingness to step outside your comfort zone.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some practical strategies for developing these essential management skills. Starting with communication. How can we become more effective communicators?
Well, one key takeaway for me from the text was the importance of tailoring your communication style to your audience.
Yeah.
It sounds obvious, but it's something we often overlook.
You wouldn't speak to a client the same way you would a close colleague, right?
Exactly. And it's not just about formality either.
Right.
It's about understanding their perspective, their needs,
Okay.
and their preferred communication style.
So how do you figure that out?
Well, think about it this way. Are they detail-oriented or big-picture thinkers? Do they prefer written communication or face-to-face conversations?
It's like you're a detective trying to figure out how to best connect with each individual.
The book also emphasizes the importance of active listening,
Yes.
which we touched on earlier. It's more than just hearing the words someone is saying. It's about really paying attention to their tone of voice, their body language, the emotions they're conveying.
You're listening with the intent to understand, not just to respond.
Exactly. And I think that's a skill that can benefit us in all areas of life,
Oh, absolutely.
not just in the workplace.
Now let's move on to delegation.
Hmm?
We talked earlier about your own struggles with delegation and how you learned to overcome them. What advice would you give to someone who's hesitant to delegate tasks?
Well, I think the first step is to really shift your mindset.
Okay,
Delegation is not a sign of weakness.
Oh.
It's a sign of strength.
I like that.
It shows that you trust your team
Hmm.
and that you're willing to empower them to take ownership.
You're recognizing that you don't have to do everything yourself, and that allowing others to contribute can actually lead to better outcomes.
Exactly. And remember those guidelines from Keith Cunningham we discussed earlier?
Yes.
Clear instructions, clear deadlines, ongoing support, and feedback.
You're setting them up for success.
Precisely. And when you delegate effectively, you're not just freeing up your own time,
Yeah.
you're creating opportunities for your team members to learn,
Yeah.
grow, and
Yeah.
develop their skills.
Okay, so on to planning. We discussed earlier how over-planning can sometimes lead to procrastination. But on the flip side, failing to plan can lead to chaos and missed opportunities. How do you find that sweet spot between planning enough, but not too much?
It's all about striking that balance. I like to think of planning as creating a roadmap, not a rigid itinerary.
Yeah.
You need a clear direction and some key milestones,
Okay.
but you also need to be flexible enough to adjust your course as needed.
The book uses the analogy of a living document,
Exactly.
suggesting that a plan should be constantly reviewed and revised as circumstances change.
And don't get bogged down in the minutia. Focus on those high-impact actions. Identify that 20% of tasks. That will produce 80% of the results.
Right.
And then you can delegate or eliminate the rest.
That makes sense. Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about leadership. We've explored different leadership styles.
Yeah.
From transactional to transformational. What are some practical steps someone can take to really develop their leadership skills?
One of the most powerful things you can do is to lead by example.
Okay.
People are more likely to follow a leader who walks the talk.
So show, don't just tell.
Exactly. And invest in your own personal development too.
Okay.
Read books, attend workshops, seek out mentors,
Right.
learn from other great leaders.
Leadership is a lifelong journey of learning and growth.
Absolutely. And don't forget to create a culture of feedback too.
Right.
Ask your team for their input.
Yeah.
Listen to their perspectives.
Okay.
Be open to constructive criticism.
Feedback is a gift.
It is, even when it's hard to hear.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to learn, grow, and become a better leader.
So now let's move on to decision-making. We talked about how emotions can sometimes cloud our judgment. How can we make more objective and rational decisions, even when we're feeling that pressure?
Take a step back and ask yourself, what are the facts? What are the potential consequences of each option? Am I letting my emotions bias my decision?
Separate the emotional from the rational.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to involve others in the process, too.
Okay.
Get a fresh perspective, bounce ideas off colleagues, challenge your own assumptions.
Two heads are better than one.
Sometimes, especially when making tough calls.
Okay, and finally, let's talk about interpersonal skills. We've discussed the importance of empathy, active listening, and clear communication. What are some other strategies for building stronger relationships and navigating those complexities of the workplace?
Focus on building rapport.
Okay.
Take the time to get to know your colleagues on a personal level.
Okay.
Find common interests, share stories, build connections that go beyond just the transactional aspects of work.
So you're humanizing the workplace.
Exactly. And be respectful of differences.
Okay.
Everyone brings their own unique perspectives and experiences to the table.
Yes.
Embrace that diversity and create an environment where everyone feels valued and included.
It sounds like building strong interpersonal skills is about creating a sense of community where people feel connected and supported.
That's a great way to put it. When people feel connected and supported, they're more likely to be engaged, productive,
Yes.
and committed to the success of the organization.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into management skills. We've explored these 6 essential skills, delved into those real-world examples, and discussed practical strategies for developing these crucial abilities.
And remember, these aren't just skills for managers.
Yeah.
They're valuable tools for anyone who wants to navigate the professional world effectively, build strong relationships, and achieve their goals.
It's a continuous journey. These skills are always evolving.
Absolutely.
There's always more to learn, more to refine, more ways to apply these principles in our own lives.
As you go forward, I want you to think about which of these skills resonates most strongly with you? Which one could you focus on developing to enhance your own effectiveness?
That's a great question for our listeners.
And what steps could you take to strengthen that skill?
I love that. Remember, the journey of developing your management skills is ongoing. Embrace the challenges, celebrate the successes, and never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into management skills. It's been a pleasure.
It has. Until next time.